I never thought the lizard people would eat me, said the man who welcomed the man-eating lizard people. Andrew, and this is Gayties Toys. On today's MIA 80s Ladies, we're going to be talking about a character and a franchise that I've wanted to do for a very long time, and I think should probably get a lot more recognition than it has. It's one that, I decided to finally tackle because there's a bit of news, little bit, but also, unfortunately, it's become very, very pertinent lately. So let's just dive right into these, Diana. To preface all of this, there are apparently some people, and YouTube especially, that don't like you to call a thing precisely what it is. So I'm going to have to do this theater of dancing around the issue. So when I talk about some of the themes, the symbols, the allegories here, we're going to be calling it like World War II. I hope you understand what I'm saying. If you don't, if you have some blind spots or want for information, that happened to be one of my majors in university. So by all means, reach out, and I've got lots of resources for you. One of my highly recommended resources is a book by Sinclair Lewis called It Can't Happen Here. Writer Kenneth Johnson actually wanted to adapt that book to a TV miniseries, and he proposed this to NBC. NBC was a little, let's say, squirrely around the World War II villains, so they kind of, were reluctant to get in bed with that. However, Johnson just decided to swap out the villains for space aliens from beyond the moon, and considering everyone was chasing Star Wars at that time, NBC was all in. The original miniseries, called simply V, first premiered in 1983 on NBC. It really begins with 50 very large Independence Day-ish spaceships descending on Earth. Out come a bunch of what looks to be humans, and they sort of say, look, we're looking for very readily available minerals here on Earth, and also, to share in our friendship, to share our technology, to become your new best friends. And they came, locked and loaded with a lot of propaganda to get humanity on their side, and it works. But not on everyone. Lots of members from the scientific community and some journalists did a little more digging around, and they, actually did infiltrate one of these UFOs to discover that not only were these, aliens not human, but rather reptile creatures with a very thin, fleshy mask hiding their true face underneath, but likewise, their intentions for Earth were far more nefarious and tasty. Nevertheless, these so-called visitors were welcome and prepared for any contingency, and they knew that humanity needed a villain. For them to, follow through with their master plans, they needed a distraction. So they took these scientists and journalists and said, they're the real villain, and they're, causing trouble, and they're, messing up our brand new friendship and relationships. So if you could go, maybe join us, or, turn in, collaborate with us a little bit, that'd be great. In response to this purge, a number of resistance cells across the globe did start, largely made up of, scientists, journalists, just people with morals, God forbid. They tended to, kind of counteract the propaganda by spraying a giant red V on all the posters. V instead of visitor, meaning victory. The original miniseries, much like It Can't Happen Here, is very much a, just step-by-step guide on how, yes, it can happen here. The cast of characters was many, and as much as it was very much an allegory for World War II, interpersonal dramas were also very, very important to this. So it made it, as much as the allegories allow the, very obvious symbolism, say the insignias on the visitors, very stylish Adidas tracksuits. The character development was also equally important, and it's made it a very huge success for NBC. As for the character in question today, that would be Diana, who was easily, without question, the breakout star, not only within the universe of the visitors and their propaganda machine, but for the audience as well. This was a time of dynasty, and Diana was very much the Alexis Colby of science fiction, and I don't think she really gets that kind of recognition as much as I think she should. She was ruthless. She was the second in command, in charge of human experimentation. She was gorgeous, filled out a catsuit real nice, just absolutely that bitch. There were, of course, a lot of other very interesting characters, men and women alike, particularly Juliet, who had become a member of the Resistance. She's someone who, I'm not going to do a second video on, but someone, who likewise, just a great, interesting, enriching character. Toy companies, likewise, chasing the next big thing, and the Star Wars of it all, were vying for, the license for V. LJN, pre-Thundercats, was the one who got it, and they had plans for, let's say, sort of two avenues of toys. One being, by 1983, 1984, a very outdated 12-inch action figure doll, if you're nasty, of an alien visitor. He very much came in the standard red suits they had, and a human head that you could just pop off and reveal a lizard creature underneath, small though it may be. The other line of toys were much more in line with what we were getting around that time, very Kenner-ish, if you will. There would be a first wave of 3 vehicles, including that killer shuttle that I just love the design from, as well as 2 resistance fighters, an alien, visitor, alien security guard, as well as, of course, Diana, the breakout of the story. She and the other visitor would likewise come with, a head-removing action to reveal the head, reptile underneath. But again, this would have been very, very tiny, so I don't know how well that would have worked. But regardless, great line, and did appear in at least one catalog. And if you do want to see, sort of more photos, more information, pladdstallions.com, who I'll link below, have done just an incredible job of covering, the V-verse, as it were. V, unfortunately, seemed to be a little bit of a moment-in-time sensation, so there was a lot of dwindling returns going forward. Johnson would go forward and make a sequel series very quickly called V: The Final Battle. His intentions were for this to be the final chapter of the story. However, NBC wanted it to go to series, so this is where rights get a little muddy. So Johnson left the project, not happy with how the direction was going, while NBC proceeded with a lot of the storylines and new characters from V: The Final Battle, leading into a very short-lived series. V: The Final Battle had decent ratings, but again, by the time we went to series, I mean, the fad had faded. So, LJN, I think wisely, saw the writing on the wall and pulled the plug very quickly on this toy line, which is too bad. However, what they pulled the plug on was the little action figures. They did make the larger 12-inch action figure doll, whatever. They brought that to stores. Again, it was not the proper time. If this was sort of the 1970s Mego era, might have done much better, but it was produced seemingly in very small numbers and was very seemingly not purchased by many people. So if you do want this, and I kind of do, it's very prohibitively difficult to find and very expensive. V, however, was not quite done. Johnson very much was believed in this idea and this franchise. He would go on to essentially ignore the events of V: The Final Battle and continue the story in novels, comic books, what have you. Likewise, NBC owned certain characters and not others, so they would do essentially a remake or a reboot of sorts in 2009, this time starring Morena Baccarin as Diana. She did a great job. Jane Badler, she was not. The series, again, probably focused more on character drama than it did the, heavy-handed allegories of the day. So it lasted about a season, plus a few extra episodes, but didn't really, catch on fire the way the original did. Likewise, as much as I think this should be a lot more celebrated than it is, I mean, there are certainly fans, but it's not really well known to the, pop culture lexicon. So Johnson, I think, still is very much interested in the V game of it all. We've not seen toys officially. Of course, customizers have been making these toys for years. There was an interesting development recently, however. So in 2022, Ramen Toys had sort of just posted some images of Diana from V on their Facebook, sort of seemingly teasing an interest in doing this character. That didn't really go too far. However, in the 2024 year-end live stream that A-Stud on the Ramen Toy YouTube channel, which likewise I'll link below, he did bring it up himself, and he did say that he, was encouraged to reach out to Kenneth Johnson directly, who still was very, very much in the V game. Johnson sort of replied saying, there's probably some rights issues, but like, maybe to get back to him in a few years. This is not news per se, but it does sort of, raise some flags for me anyway, saying, maybe perhaps, the NBC ownership of X, Y, and Z and his of this might have an expiry date sometime in the next few years. We shall see what comes of that. But he very much said, I'm not quite ready at this moment to get into the merchandise, but certainly in the future, which again is speaking of lizard people, perhaps I'm just conspiracy theorying my way through this, but I do have hope that, in the next few years, long after this series has wrapped, that we will get some, V figures, be it those LJN figures or something new and sexy like modern collectors. And that'll do it for Diana and V and the rest of the cast, apparently. This franchise is one that I do kind of suspect might catch on in the next few years. The book it's based off of loosely certainly has blown up in sales in the past few weeks, so if you've not watched it, it's a bit difficult to find, but definitely worth a watch. Again, a little heavy-handed, but very interesting and very much, a bit of a harsh reflection on many of us. So I thank you for watching. I thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, all those YouTube things, and I will see you next time on MIA 80s Ladies.